Welcome back to Nothing But the Truth. I'm your host, Trudy Stern, and today we have an important discussion about one of the most critical entities impacting our world, the United Nations. The UN was born in 1945 out of the ashes of World War II, created to secure peace, promote cooperation, and stabilize a shattered world. Most nations were devastated following World War II, impoverished, or just emerging. And the United States stepped in as the anchor, paying the lion's share, building the infrastructure, and underwriting the security framework that allowed the UN to function. And nearly 80 years later, one thing hasn't changed. America still pays the overwhelming portion of the bill. But what has changed is the world and the UN itself. Power has shifted into the hands of authoritarian regimes. Human rights councils are chaired by dictators. Terrorist supporters shape international norms. And while many of these nations have grown wealthy, their contributions remain minimal, even as they use the UN to attack Western values and obsessively target the world's only Jewish state. President Trump has drawn a clear line: no more blank checks. UN accountability is now the price of American support, and the world is about to find out whether this institution can be fixed or whether it's too far gone. That brings us to tonight's guest, Ambassador Jeff Bartos. Ambassador Jeff Bartos is the U.S. representative to the United Nations for management and reform, a role that carries the rank of ambassador and a mandate to restore transparency, accountability, and fiscal discipline to the UN system. He is an accomplished business leader, attorney, entrepreneur, and public servant. He's built companies, restructured complex organizations, led major philanthropic initiatives, and earned a national reputation for competence, integrity, and results-driven leadership. Confirmed by the United States Senate, Ambassador Bartos was chosen because he understands something very essential. When a global institution becomes bloated, inefficient, or disconnected from its founding mission, you don't just abandon it, you reform it. He's already begun pushing for change, targeting waste, exposing inefficiencies, pressing for budget discipline, and insisting that nations share the financial burden. His work has sweeping implications, not just for the American taxpayers, but for the future of international governance and the United Nations itself. Ambassador Bartos, welcome to Nothing But the Truth.
Trudy, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be with you, and thank you for covering this very important and not very well understood topic about the United Nations. It's right here in New York, and I think people understand at a high level maybe what it is, but there's a lot to it, and I'm really grateful for you taking the time to discuss this with me.
And thank you so much. It's really an honor to have you on the show. We've all probably gone to visit the United Nations as class trips. All of our kids have gone as on class trips. But I think there's so much to understand, and I'm so happy to have you here to go through it all. Before we get to the actual meat and potatoes of the United Nations, let's start with the basics so our listeners understand the structure that you're operating inside of. How many ambassadors are there to the United Nations? I think we've all heard about Mike Waltz, but obviously you're an ambassador at the United Nations. So where does your role, ambassador for management and reform, fit within that system?
Well, there's 193 countries at the UN. When it was founded, it was 51. Now there's 193, and each country will have at least what they call a perm rep, or the ambassador to the UN from that country. Most countries will have what they call a deputy perm rep. So let's say at least two ambassador level women or men from each of the 193 countries at a minimum. In the United States, we have five. We have what's called the Perm Rep. That's Ambassador Waltz, my colleague, my friend, and someone I spend an awful lot of time with, who's just a tremendous leader and a great public servant across his whole career. And we could talk about that if you want at some point in the interview. But so Ambassador Waltz, Ambassador nominee Tammy Bruce has been nominated to be the Deputy Permanent Representative of the United States. I'm the representative for UN Management and Reform. My colleague Jennifer Lasetta is our alternate representative for Special Political Affairs. She spends most of her time and her team in the Security Council. And then my colleague, Ambassador Dan Negrea, is our representative to the ECOSOC, the Economic and Social Council of the UN. So Congress saw fit to create 5 positions to staff our UN mission because we are the home country, we're the host country, and we are interacting with 192 other nations. And as you said in the introduction, the United States has been from the very beginning and remains the largest contributor to the UN system by far. And so it is incumbent, Congress saw fit, and presidents in the past signed legislation to make sure that we had the representation we needed to make sure that every dollar spent went to, and it didn't always get it right over the last 80 years, for sure, but that these positions were all charged with making sure that we represent our country and our taxpayers and make sure our dollars go where they're supposed to.
So it sounds like a really very tremendous role that you have. You stated that the United Nations started with 51 countries and grew to today we have 193 countries as part of the UN. How do you become a member of the UN?
Well, and so over time, the system is set up. You have to be recommended by the Security Council, and so that to anything passed in the Security Council, it requires 9 votes. Today, 9 votes out of 15. There are 15 members of the Security Council, 5 permanent members. So that's the United States, Great Britain, France, Russia, and China. So those 5 members have, I'm sure you've heard, and many of your listeners have, there's a veto. Each of what they call the P5, the permanent 5, have a veto. So for anything to pass the Security Council, it needs 9 votes and 0 vetoes. Can't have a veto. So you could have 14 votes in favor. If one of the P5 vote against it, veto it, then it doesn't pass. So for a country to be admitted to the UN, it must get at least 9 votes in the Security Council and then be approved by the General Assembly, a majority vote of the General Assembly.
So just to clarify for the listeners and for myself also, the Security Council is made up of a smaller group. The General Assembly is 193 members.
Yes.
The Security Council is made up of a much, much smaller group. And what's the role of the Security Council vis-a-vis the General Assembly?
So the General Assembly is a deliberative body. Its resolutions, generally speaking, are advisory. The Security Council makes international law. Resolutions passed by the Security Council have the import, they have the thrust and the force of international law. And so any peacekeeping mission that you've ever heard of, I mean, we can go most recently, the International Stabilization Force and the Board of Peace that were passed, and the historic resolution that President Trump and Secretary Rubio and Ambassador Waltz that we all put forward just last month on November 17th to pass the Security Council with 13 votes in favor, 0 against, and 2 abstentions. That has the force of international law and has created the Board of Peace and the International Stabilization Force and the structure that will govern Gaza as we hope Gaza becomes fulfills what the president and everyone who was in Sharm el-Sheikh who signed that historic peace agreement envisions for Gaza. So the Security Council, the decisions of the Security Council have the force of international law. The General Assembly, most of what the General Assembly does is advisory.
And how many members? I know you said that there were 5 members, permanent members of the Security Council, but how many members are there?
Total 15. There are the 10 elected members. They rotate for 2-year terms, and they are geographically represented. So many from Africa, so many from Southeast Asia, so many from Europe, so many from South America, Central America, and they rotate. 5 are elected for a 2-year term, 5 are elected for another 2-year term, and they overlap. So at any one time, so here we are coming to December 31st, there will be 5 elected members of the Security Council whose terms will end on 12/31, and 5 new members will join on 1/1. And then the other 5 who are then going to serve their second year Their terms will end on December 31st of 2026. But the permanent five remain: the United States, Great Britain, France, Russia, and China.
And they're also, obviously, they're also part of the General Assembly.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Um, that's a great framework. So, in terms of all of these other entities that we hear about, like UNRWA, um, and UNESCO, where do they fit into this whole story?
So the United Nations creates, so there's the General Assembly, there's the Security Council, but there are a total of 29 agencies spread all over the world. Things like the International Atomic Energy Agency that sits in Vienna, the World Food Program that sits in Rome, the World Health Organization, which is in Vienna, I'm sorry, in Geneva. Many organizations sit in Geneva. There's 29 organizations that make up what we call the UN system. And so something like UNRWA or UNESCO are created through General Assembly resolutions, and they are many times separate governance, separate funding streams. Many, but not all, of these agencies are voluntarily funded. They may get some. We could talk about assessed funding versus voluntary funding. So they may get some assessed funding, member dues, but a lot of it is voluntary contributions. And so you said at the outset, and I appreciate very much that very nice introduction. Uh, this is a very complicated structure to understand the financing of all of this, how dues get paid, how money gets spent, and the damage or good that these independent or quasi-independent groups can do. UNRWA is a good example. The United States pulled our funding, voluntary funding from UNRWA. We have done it. The first Trump administration, we did it. The Biden administration reinstated it. Then after October 7th, shortly after October 7th, the Biden administration pulled it again. The Trump administration made sure that we defunded UNRWA from the U.S. contributions, but because they fund voluntarily, countries from all over the world continue to send money to UNRWA, and that's a problem. As the secretary has said, UNRWA has become a subsidiary of Hamas, and that's unacceptable to the United States.
So let's just start at the beginning, at the top, because we've delved into like a couple of different different things like UNRWA and the IAEA. So, in terms of the budget of the United Nations, can you just go through the actual budget of the United Nations?
Sure. So think of it, it's not a club, but think of it like a club in the sense of if any of your listeners pay dues to a gym, they pay dues to a condo association, whatever. There's assessed contributions. So the United Nations, made up of 193 nations, your assessed contributions, our assessed contributions for what they call the regular budget, is your share of global GDP. So in the case of the United States, we're assessed 22% of the regular budget. The regular budget in 2024 was approximately $3.5 billion. So the U.S. would have gotten a bill on January 1st of 2025 for 22% of $3.5 billion. Let's call it just a little more than $700 million. So that would be our contribution to the regular budget. There's also a peacekeeping budget, which is separate and apart from that.
Wait. The 22% that represents the United States share,
Yes.
do we actually make up 22% of the GDP?
We actually make up a little more than 22%, and we get assessed a little more, but we, the United States, we're statutorily capped at 22%. So we don't pay more than 22%. And so we're now at 22%. In the most recent scales of assessment, China's at 20%. So they're, and together, well, you can do the math. Together, we make up 42% of the regular budget. The peacekeeping budget is a separate assessment. There, the permanent five members of the Security Council have a slight increase in what we're asked to pay in addition to our quote unquote share of global GDP. So there, the United States gets assessed a little more than 26%, 26.1%, and we are again statutorily capped at 25%. So we do not pay more than 25%. The UN bills us for 26.1%. We pay 25% when we agree to do we're working on, and that budget is again around about $6 billion. So we're we're assessed 25% of $6 billion for the peacekeeping budget. Now
And,
the rest,
and does
okay,
China also pay 20% of that?
no, China's assessment of the peacekeeping is less. Um, Off the top of my head, I don't know what their share is, but it is less. But when the next scales of assessment come out, I believe they'll be coming close to where we are in terms of the assessment. Now that if you add 6 billion and 3.5 billion, let's just round it up for simple math to $10 billion. The overall budget of the whole UN system is about $64 billion. The bulk of the rest is made up of a combination of assessed contributions to organizations like the World Health Organization, like the World, um, I mean, that's a good example. There's other organizations that have assessed contributions, and then what they call voluntary funding. So the United States is far and away the largest funder to the World Food Program. That's all voluntary. And that's in excess of $4 billion a year that we, the United States, proudly contribute to the World Food Program. So when you add it all up on $64 billion, the United States, between assessed and voluntary, we contribute for last year about 12 to $13 billion of the 64 billion that is spent through the system in any given year.
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, and it's way more. It's 6 times what China puts through the system, and it's more than double the next closest.
How about countries like Qatar and Saudi Arabia that are very wealthy countries? How much are they contributing?
Well, they're assessed based on their share of GDP for the regular budget, and for the for peacekeeping, they're assessed what they're assessed, and then they're voluntary. I'm sure I don't know exactly what they contribute to the system, but whatever they decide to do could be made up in voluntary contributions.
Because it seems like they're very vocal compared to what they might be contributing.
Well, it's an interesting. I've been here 3 months. It's the honor of a lifetime. Um, Very, very grateful to President Trump, and it's the honor of a lifetime to have this opportunity. And I get to work. I serve President Trump. I serve Secretary Rubio, Ambassador Waltz, and the American people. It really is an honor to do this work. I've been here 3 months. The Senate confirmed us in September. Moved right up here, and uh, in 3 months, I have worked with well over 100 countries on issues very discreet and then very public. But I will say that the historic resolution that was passed in November to implement the president's 20-point peace plan would not have happened without a really broad coalition of partners, both in the region and around the world. It's pretty extraordinary what can happen with the president's leadership.
That's really great to hear. So countries that like just thinking about the budget for just another second, it seems like countries that could not have paid originally now have very large economies, but they seem to contribute not so much. They contribute little. So is one of your roles, trying to normalize that, or can that be fixed?
Well, so let me answer the question a little differently. My girls, my daughters, who are 25 and 23, so they're not little kids. They ask all the time, Dad, what the heck do you do there? So let me answer the question when we talk about it as a family. Dad, what do you do there? Jeff, what do you do there? Well, Cheryl wants to know why I'm not home. What are you doing? Um, we have embarked on a very, very rigorous reform program. So between now and the end of the year, which is just a couple weeks, we are hoping to get passed through the General Assembly a 15% cut to the regular budget. 15% cut is north of $700 million. When you add in all of the work that we're doing there. More than $500 million. And we had almost over $700 million cut to the peacekeeping budget. So we've already cut the peacekeeping budget by $700 million. We're looking and we plan to cut the regular budget by over $500 million. We have eliminated 2,600 posts. We will have by the end of the year. Posts that just it's grown too big, the bureaucracy's too big, they're not accomplishing what they need to. They need to get back to basics, being the UN. So before we get to the end of the year, over 700 million in peacekeeping cuts, over 500 million in regular budget cuts, 2,600 posts eliminated across the globe. And that's just in the first 3 months since we got here, or be 4 months then. For 2026, we're going to embark on more aggressive reform measures. We're going to be looking to close down organizations and missions that aren't working. We're going to be looking to strip back and right size the bureaucracy and the overlapping agencies that employ too many people and don't accomplish enough, whether it's in development or human rights or on the peace and security side. And then in 2027, we're going to start to work with a new Secretary General. There'll be an election next year. Your question about who's paying what, one of the things that our team is working on that we'll be able to do in 2027 is rebalance the scales of assessment. The US should be paying less, the rest of the world should be paying more, the burden sharing should be more evenly spread, and the president's given us a very clear charge. The UN has great potential, it needs to get back to basics, it needs to focus on peace and security, and it needs to stop wasting money.
So you are basically the ambassador of Doge to the UN. To the UN.
I'm the secretary's and Ambassador Waltz's point on all of this, and the president's as well, of course.
So your role seems to be very much about the economics of the UN, but it seems like in addition to the economics, we're bankrolling a system that often votes very much against American values. So, I mean, how does that work? How does that play in? It's almost like we're paying for people to do things very much contrary to our safety and security as Americans. And of course, the way Israel is treated is very, very horrible also.
I was proud to deliver remarks this week. The 10th of December will be the 50th anniversary of the United Nations passing the shameful Zionism is racism resolution. Then Ambassador Daniel Patrick Moynihan gave one of the most brilliant speeches that's ever been given on the floor of the United Nations, explaining why the United States was voting against this shameful and unconscionable resolution. So this problem, which you rightly identify, goes back 50 years or more. And through President, I mean, again, I said before, it's the honor of a lifetime. It is a genuine privilege to serve the most consequential and effective president in history for the U.S.-Israel relationship, who has a record of combating anti-Semitism that is second to none. And it's why I'm so excited to get up here and to serve the president and the American people in this role, because we're actually taking the fight to the institutions that are doing damage to Western values. The anti-Americanism, the anti-West, the anti-Israel bias here is deep and it's wide, and the intellectual and moral rot is real. And there's a couple ways to combat that. First and foremost, it's through the funding mechanisms. The budget matters. Budgets are priorities, and the United States will not allow this to continue. And the way to exercise that oversight is through the budget. So we're working on that actively. And then it's good old-fashioned diplomacy. I mean, we are out every day. That's why there's 5 of us. plus our great team. We are out there every day fighting on behalf of the American people, on behalf of our values. And the point is made in every meeting. Every meeting, I will make a point of making sure that we discuss what is wrong with the human rights pillar, what is wrong with certain resolutions that are unfairly and unconscionably targeting the United States, our values, and our allies, including, of course, our indispensable ally, Israel. So it's a long process. Um, there's a lot of important work that the UN does, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. We spend a lot of our time combating the stuff that's either broken or worse is rotten.
Well, it's really great to actually hear from you about the positive parts of the United Nations, because what we've seen in the past couple of years has been nothing short of shameful about what the United Nations is seeking to accomplish with regard to Israel and the United States also. So I'm hearing some positive or a lot of positive from you about what is good about the United Nations, and that's really, really great to hear. So, can you tell us about that part of the United Nations that we don't actually hear about or know about?
Well, there's something called the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, everything's an acronym around here, everything. Um, Based in Montreal. You've never heard of it. I never heard of it until I studied for my Senate confirmation hearing. It governs international civil aviation, and it makes sure that every pilot landing every plane around the globe is following the same set of rules and speaking English. And so you don't have to worry wherever you're approaching, taking off or landing, anywhere around the world, you don't have to worry about miscommunication, the wrong language. They're all following the same rule book and they're all speaking English. And that is because of this small body that nobody's heard of in Montreal. That's a UN organization. The World Intellectual Property Organization, um, based in Geneva. Uh, U.S. values are also our companies. It's our intellectual property. It's protecting U.S. companies and their intellectual property around the world. And we do that through the World Intellectual Property Organization, which is a UN body based in Geneva. It's indispensable to U.S. business leadership and something that's quite important to companies around the world to protect their intellectual property because not all of our fellow UN members share our appreciation for private property and intellectual property rights. I mean, obviously. And then something called the International Telecommunications Union, ITU, also based in Geneva. We want U.S. technology, U.S. software, U.S. telecommunications equipment being the global standard. We cannot have our adversaries setting the standards or either the infrastructure of how systems communicate, the telecommunications that not only links the world but also into outer space. The ITU is a vital and it's run by an American, Doreen Bogdan Martin, who's up for re-election this year. We worked hard to get her elected. We're working hard to make sure she gets reelected. It's critical for U.S. national security. You get into space. So there's lots of space organizations that are critically important, again, that we never discussed, but this is all part of the UN system. And then getting back to basics, the president said to the whole world, just across the street from where I'm sitting in September, he said to the UN has great potential, but it's failing to meet its potential. The president's absolutely right. He charged the UN with getting back to basics, to focusing on its founding principle of promoting international peace and security. And President Trump and his leadership, he's driving the UN. Just in the last couple of months, a gang suppression force was passed through the Security Council to try to stabilize Haiti. That's burden sharing. I just left a conference just an hour ago where nations from around the world are pledging troops and money to help the Haitian people and to suppress the gangs and to give the Haitian people a chance at self-governance and to rebuild their country. That's happening through the UN, through U.S. leadership, through the Security Council. And of course, we discussed it a number of times. The president's historic leadership, his consequential leadership on the Gaza peace plan, on ending the war, bringing the hostages home, and giving the Gazan people a chance um, at living a better life. Now it's ultimately going to be up to them. But the world answered the call. We all saw the world leaders standing there at Sharm el Sheikh. A little story, by the way, I'll share with you. In September, just a month before the president was in Sharm el Sheikh with all those leaders, there was a small conversation that happened right across the street. The president convened a group of majority Muslim, majority Arab countries to talk about a path forward for the region. Our hostages had to come home. The bodies of Americans who were murdered by Hamas, who were being held gruesomely and barbarically in captivity, had to come home. The president set down the marker. He charged the world with finding a solution, and we did, um, because of the president's leadership. And so that happened through a meeting here at the UN. It happened through the Security Council, and that amazing day. I'm sure you cried like you and Stanley cried the way Cheryl and I cried that day. It was 2 very long years, and for the world. And that day, those 20 living hostages came home because of the president's leadership, because he had the guts to stand up and make it happen. And it happened because of a meeting, not only because of a meeting across the street, but that meeting helped propel the process forward.
So it seems like you're you feel well. First of all, thank you for sharing all of the really good things that the United Nations accomplishes. Because to us, reading the newspapers and watching television and seeing the news, it doesn't seem like there is any good whatsoever. But the 2 points that you made are very, very important. One, that they do accomplish a lot of very important things that you've just delineated, and also maintaining a seat at the table with all of these nations can lead to something like the hostages being released, or the 20-point plan. So I see that that is very important to maintain that grouping or the ability to actually speak with all of these nations, whether they're friends or foe.
Yeah, it's a great point you make, and this isn't my point. Ambassador Waltz talks about this all the time. I completely agree with him. The world needs one place in the world where everybody can talk, a place where everyone can see each other and can talk. And we would rather that be in America, in New York, than in some faraway place, whether it's Beijing or Moscow or some other place. And so the world needs a place to convene and to talk, and it's here in New York. Trudy, it has a lot of problems. I mean, I spend most of my day, like most of my 15, 16-hour day is spent looking at things that are broken and how do we either end them, shut them down, or if they're fixable, what is the path to fixing them? And how do we save the shocking amount of money that's wasted across the street? We can do that in another interview if you want. I mean, I could give you a long list of just stupid things that the UN does. I'll give you one little example. The UN writes reports after reports after reports that nobody reads. The UN did a report this year on the reports that nobody reads. I'm not making that up. I can send you the link. And the average report in the UN costs $25,000 to translate, just to translate into 6 languages. Not to write the report, not to pay the people who wrote the report and went to conferences on the report. $25,000 just to translate reports that nobody's reading. The UN spent $360 million last year on conferences and on reports and meetings. $360 million. So it really needs to get better. It needs to get back to basics. I don't want to give your listeners the wrong impression who are listening, being like, I hate the UN. There is a lot wrong here. And we are working on it every hour of every day, 7 days a week. We don't stop. But I did want to share with you some of the important work that is done through the system that how would anyone have ever heard of it? because it's working and it's not political and it's not in the news, but it just works and it's important to the national security and the everyday functioning of our lives.
So to me, it seems like there's three categories of things, and I'm sure there's probably a million categories of things that that fit into your role. And firstly, um, eliminating waste, like you've just delineated. So you look through and you eliminate waste. That's really helpful. Then there is looking at things that are really valuable and making sure that those stay in existence. And then you have things like UNRWA. So if we could just speak about that for a moment. How do you deal with an entity that's so contrary to both Israel and America? It's clearly being used as used by the United Nations as a way to spread terror. um, you know, how do you deal with entities like that? Which there seems to be a lot. As many as you spoke about that are good, there's definitely a handful, if not more, that are worse than just bad. They are really destructive to the American safety and security, as well as to our ally Israel. So, um, what do you do with entities like that?
Well, as I mentioned before, the president, through executive orders, we uh, we defunded UNRWA. We the Trump administration defunded UNRWA. President President gave very clear directive, and it was done. Um, the special rapporteur, Francesca Albanese, who reports to the so-called Human Rights Council in Geneva, with a UN imprimatur. She has tried to blacklist U.S. companies and Israeli companies. She is a rabid, zealous anti-Semite, anti-American zealot, and she's been sanctioned by the United States. She can't enter the United States, can't use a credit card, can't get a visa to come here. She's tried to wage lawfare against the United States, and through the leadership of the president and through Secretary Rubio and our colleagues here at the State Department, she's been sanctioned. The Commission of Inquiry against Israel, likewise, two of the three members stepped down when they saw this that the lawfare that they were using in this unfair targeting of the United States and our ally Israel was just not going to work. They were not going to get away with it. They resigned. So the U.S., we are taking the steps, and again, we're not done with all of that, but just in this year and just in the last couple of months, um, these two of these actions were taken. And then, of course, I think it was right January 20th, February 1st, right at the start of the administration, that we defunded UNRWA and we pulled out of UNESCO as well in the first 6 months of the administration. So we're taking the steps that are necessary. There's a lot more work that needs to be done, but it is every day. I have the honor to walk past the president's portrait and the American flag, and the vice president and the secretary and Mike's Ambassador Waltz's portraits as we walk in and come up to work here and serve the American people. It's a true honor. And I'd ask. I mean, you got a lot of important people to talk to. I'm honored to have the opportunity to speak with you, but I'm happy to come back and give you periodic updates on how we're doing. You can hold me accountable to. You said you were going to reform this. You said you were going to cut that. Where are you on that? Happy to report back on our important work here.
And we are going to hold you to that. How much of the entire budget that the United States spends at the United Nations, how much are you looking to cut? How much do you think you can save us?
Well, as I mentioned, we're going to, I believe, I'm very confident we're going to get the 15% cut to the regular budget before December 31st of 2025. We'll be looking to save a lot more money next year in 2026. Riding along with that is the Secretary General campaign and then the election for the next Secretary General. And we'll be looking, I mean, it's early days, but clearly we're going to want a reform-minded candidate who wants to get back to basics, to cut out the waste, cut out the nonsense, stop doing things the UN is not good at. They've proven not good at. So we're we've already saved over $1 billion just in the last 3 months. Cut over 2,500 posts, jobs of UN bureaucrats. So we're making real progress. But next year, I think we'll be when we have a full year to do this work. I'm confident we're going to achieve even more efficiencies, savings, and the most important part of all this is not cutting jobs or cutting money for the sake of cutting money. It has to be fit for purpose. It has to be focused. The UN does a couple things very well. It should do those things really well. It should stop doing the things it's quite bad at. And that's a very simple mission, very hard to accomplish.
So our time, sadly, is coming to a close.
Yes.
And I just want to say that we're very, very lucky to have you where you are and overseeing this budget. It seems to me like it's very close to the effect that sanctions have when they're passed through the Congress and Senate on malign countries. And you're able to do that also, cut things that are contrary to us, like UNRWA, not on your own, but obviously with the mandate of the president, and are able to somehow, maybe bring this entity back to a place that it was originally set out for, which is, peacekeeping and a place where countries can come together to make the world a better place, not what it has grown into.
I mean, the president has a clear vision. He's the president of peace. He has the most consequential and effective president in my lifetime. And our job here at the United Nations, the U.S. mission to the United Nations, is to implement the president's agenda, to implement his vision, and to go to work every day fighting for the American people and implementing the president's agenda as he's laid out. I mean, he just on his own, he's settled 8, maybe it might be 9 now, conflicts around the world. And he said to the UN, I want you to be a partner in all this. Get back to the basics of international peace and security and help. We could solve a lot more if we do some burden sharing and you focus on, the UN, focus on what you were designed to do in the first place. And that's a really encouraging mission. We work, like I said, we work 7 days a week to execute the president's agenda and to implement his vision. And we're just getting started.
Well, thank you, Ambassador Jeff Bartos. Thank you for your clarity and insight, but also, most importantly, for your commitment to ensuring that American leadership, American taxpayer dollars are used responsibly on the world stage. And thank you so much for your service. Clearly, you could be successful in anything that you do, and you've chosen to do this service, such important work. This conversation really matters, and the future of the UN, American influence, and global stability around the world depend on getting this right. And thank you so much. I think the president was right in his nominating you as an ambassador. And I do hope that you will come back and give us periodic updates. Our listeners really would love to hear that, as I would.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your kind words. It's an honor to do this work. It really is a privilege to serve the president and the American people. And thank you for having me on.
Our pleasure. To our listeners, thank you so much for joining us. This has been Nothing But the Truth with Trudy Stern. You can catch us every Thursday at 9:30 on the radio. If you've missed any part of this episode or want to listen to any past shows, you can find Nothing But the Truth wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, stay strong, stay informed, and keep seeking nothing but the truth.